Thank you so much for joining us for our final Q&A session with AHA Executive Director Roy Speckhard and AHA Board President Sunil Panikov.
Well, this almost takes us to the end of this American Humanist Association conference. We've enjoyed a number of diverse, stimulating topics presented by some wonderful speakers indeed. And as Nicole mentioned, AHA President Sunil Panikov and I will be taking questions from you in a few moments, so go ahead and populate them. Before we start that process, there's some very necessary thanks are in order. I'd like to thank especially our MC and conference planner, Nicole Carr, without which this would not have been possible. Our technical support staff, Emily Newman and Meredith Thompson. Our team moderating behind the scenes, Isabel Oldfield, Anna Clay, Margie DeLeo, and Peter Bjork. Our directors who participated in the sessions, our social media coordinator, Inanoshe Akusin, our art director, Sharon McGill, for the videos and promotion, the rest of the AHA staff who pitched in and helped run the organization as we put this together, our fantastic speakers and moderators, our Humanist of the Year, Dr. Fauci, our chapters and affiliates who bring humanism to communities across the country, our AHA Board of Directors and other leadership teams representing the Center for Free Thought Equality, the Humanist Society, the Latinx Humanist Alliance, the Black Humanist Alliance, the Humanist Foundation, the Institute for Humanist Studies, and the Humanist Legal Society, and our colleagues and at friendly organizations that helped out spread the word about this event and will be helping out with our lobby day work tomorrow. To those who made a contribution, thank you for giving extra. It truly helps us. And thanks especially to all of you who participated in this conference by tuning in, engaging yourselves with these topics, and checking in on the chat with your comments and questions. Now we're interested to hear your questions and discuss humanism a bit further for those who'd like to participate. And for those of you signing off, thank you again for all you do for humanism, and please stay safe.
Thank you, Roy. We do have a few questions that are coming to us. Sudesh Gudero, who is one of our international attendees, asks, what challenges do humanists especially face due to some of the important sort of issues facing us right now, including climate change, COVID-19, religious faith, etc.? Maybe we want to take those separately.
Wow, that's a big question.
Roy, do you want to go first?
Sure. So we address these, and there certainly are highlighted challenges at this time in all those areas. Climate change, for instance, we have our Here for Climate programs with education and seminars and toolkits that can be found at the Here for Climate website. The other, Nicole, if you'll ping me on the other pieces of that. There were like 4.
Oh, he asked about climate change, COVID, and religious faith.
Right. Well, with climate change, with COVID, I think there's been a special need for us to stand up for those who need our help. The marginalized communities who maybe not have been getting the access to things that they should. We've supported legislation and activism and the administration around making sure that immigrants, for instance, had equal access to COVID-19 relief. And I think it behooves us to shift our strategies during this time as well to make sure that we can reach out to folks. We talked earlier about how there's been a plethora of seminars and webinars and activities, ways for people to engage from their homes, like this conference, and others. And I think that's another way that we've lend our hand in a sort of way during this pandemic. And as far as in the religious communities, I think that's a little bit more of a complex question. But I'll just say that when we can and when our values align on any subject, really, we work with religious communities together to make things happen that we care about. And when they don't align, we definitely stand up for humanist secular values and the rights of non-theists.
Yeah, I think, just to pick up on what Roy was just speaking of, on the religious front, I think as we all realize, in the US, we do have a serious challenge to our fundamental worldview that's really prominent now, for the last several years now, and that manifests itself in things like the composition of the Supreme Court and how it affects, our ability to have equal rights for non-Tias, and so therefore we are looking forward, to fighting for our equality for non-Tias, and despite all these challenges to our, from various quarters against our, equal rights, and that's definitely one of the major challenges that we will be addressing going forward. And climate change is obviously something that affects all of our planet, and as humanists, we definitely need to promote good information about it and continue to make sure that the planet is safeguarded as best as we can, despite the unfounded skepticism that a lot of people have about the human element in climate change. And as far as COVID goes, we have changed our mode of operation very, very well. Our staff has pivoted beautifully over the last year to really make it possible to continue with our shared goals and using channels of communication and means of engaging our communities in ways that we haven't done before, and we've been very successful at it. And this conference represents probably the best example of that. We have brought together people here and been able to do many of the things we would do in a live conference, and it's worked really well. So I'll stop there. There's plenty to talk about, but we can probably go on to the next question.
That's a pretty good segue, Sunil, to this question from, now I've lost it, from Lisa Ridge, which is, will the AHA continue to use a virtual platform for future conferences, since it has allowed so many more people to attend and participate?
Yeah, I can definitely take that quickly. For some of you may know that, even in 2019, before COVID, we actually had a format for our conference that actually was partially virtual, and that it was a distributed conference that was held at multiple venues. And then, the rest of, we made sure that people at the other venues were able to view it virtually, and then plus some of it was, available for people who couldn't attend. So even before COVID, we were, really going down that path. And of course, last year we had a one-day conference that was very successful right in the middle of the height of the pandemic, that we really brought our community together in a really successful way in August of last year. And this year, of course, we have sort of elevated our game here in terms of the kind of features that we are making available that go well beyond what we did last year. So absolutely, we will continue to use these ways of bringing our communities together. Of course, as soon as we can, we'll definitely try to have in-person conferences. But this mode of doing things, which makes it possible to bring together a lot more people, and people can attend who otherwise may not be able to attend. So definitely, we will be making use of this mechanism going forward. Roy?
Yeah, so I don't have anything to add to that.
Switching gears a little, is the AHA taking a position or doing work to combat voting restrictions, laws, and efforts? That's from
definitely. Yes. So we're very much involved in voting rights as much as we can be. We don't always take the lead on those issues, but oftentimes join coalition efforts to make a difference on voting rights efforts. We're not favorable toward voting ID. We seek and pretty much anything that puts barriers between people and their right to vote. So we're trying to find ways to avoid that, and when they come up, we support the side that allows for the vote. And specifically, the For the People Act is one of the legislative priorities that help address this issue that we support.
Yeah, and I just want to add that as humanists, we need democracy, a successful, healthy, functioning democracy, for us to protect our rights. And so it's a fundamental aspect of our ability to be able to live our lives, that we are, that we have the democracy that has strengths and sustainability. And in that sense, voting rights is a key part of our ability to go forward as humanists. And so we'll definitely be doing whatever we can to make sure that democracy in this republic continues to be sustained, and the separation of religion and government, which is going to be a direct consequence of our ability to sustain a healthy democracy, is also sustained.
Our next question is from Mark Reimers. Please comment on long-term membership trends. Religious membership is certainly in decline, according to polls. Is humanist membership increasing?
Yes. Now, religious membership in decline is true, of course, in particular religious groups, but also in people identifying with religion overall. In the same way, as many people are aware, the number of people identifying as non-religious is rapidly on the rise, especially when we think about young folks. I believe there's over a third of people entering their first year in college who are non-religious. And we know from years and years of studies that the longer people are in college, the less likely they are to identify as religious. So this is going to be a trend that continues as folks go through their schooling years. And we're going to see an increasing number of non-religious. And the AHA, of course, has grown its membership significantly over the past years and is up over 30,000.
Yeah, and I just want to add that aspect, the fact that there is a very large fraction of younger people, as much as a third or more of people below 40 who are part of the nuns group, people who don't have a religious affiliation. That is our biggest growth opportunity. There are a lot of people among that who essentially subscribe to our worldview, but may not be aware of the term humanism and may not identify specifically with that word. So converting more and more of that demographic force into membership and alignment with our movement and with our organization is going to be how American humanism can get more influential, and all of us can have better success at protecting our rights. So that is something that is a big part of our view going forward. Out of the 5 strategic goals that the AHA board has put together, which are all equally important, one of them is increasing younger humanist participation, and a key part of that is because a large fraction of young humanists, younger people, are potentially humanists who would very easily identify with humanism.
Neil, since you brought up the strategic plan and named one of the goals, do you want to quickly run through what the other strategic planning goals are?
Yeah, so the background for this is that every few years, the AHA board puts together a strategic plan that provides guidance to the staff who do all the hard work on a day-to-day basis to furthering the shared goals that all of us have as being humanists and part of the AHA. And so in 2020, the AHA board put together the latest version of that, which has 5 goals. All of them are equally important. And so in no particular order, one is an elevated profile for humanism in society, which amounts to making sure that the rest of the world, so to speak, knows about us and knows us for who we are. The second one is equality for humanists, which has sort of somewhat obvious connotations, such as separating religion from government and making sure that our rights are protected to the same degree that the rights of religious people are protected. The third one is an expanded humanist involvement in social justice. The AHA's tagline, being good without a God. Everybody knows what the without a God part is. The being good part has a lot of meanings depending on the times we live in and so on. So in the here and now, social justice is a key part of the being good part of our tagline, and that is why it's one of the 5 equally important goals that we have put together.
Coach isn't responding.
The fourth one is community involvement for humanists, improving chances for humanists to get together in local communities, because that's the way we are going to move, grow the movement and get more people involved. And the last one is the one that I already mentioned, which is accelerated participation for young humanists, for the obvious reason that there are more and more young people who identify as not being religious, and therefore many of them, as I said earlier, would identify with humanism and with humanist principles, but may not be aware of that. And that's a great opportunity for us to bring them into the movement.
Wilson Jacob asks, are there any plans by AHA or programs to train members in properly promoting humanism or running local chapters? He says he's specifically talking about sort of humanist leadership training.
Well, we do have master classes in humanism that we do on an annual basis that our Humanist Education Center runs. And those provide some of that kind of training. And there's also training online through the Humanist Education, that was offline, that covers some of the topics that you mentioned. But I think it is something that we can do more on, and find ways to educate and help our volunteer leaders to be effective in running their local groups, because that's an important piece of our community building, as Sunil kind of referred to in the strategic planning process.
Sam is asking, does the AHA have online programs to guide young people towards humanistic solutions?
We do have the Kids Without a God website, which is, could maybe use some bulking up a bit, but does have some of that information out there and is very bold and straightforward. We're not trying to convert kids to humanism. We're trying to say, hey, kids, if you're interested in humanism, come check us out. And so that's why it's such a bold, clear statement, Kids Without a God. That's something that I encourage you to check out.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize, as one of the strategic goals being, getting more involvement from young humanists, we will be looking for ways to build community for young humanist families, for example. That is the kind of thing that we haven't probably spent enough time on, in the past years. And going forward, as part of our those strategic goals, we'll definitely be looking for ways in which we can bring in, say, young humanist families as part of our communities. And what we have learned in the last year and a half, in fact, many other groups and organizations and even corporations have learned, is that there is a lot you can get done without being in the same place. And that's something that we're going to leverage going forward to take advantage of building community in ways in which more and more younger people, including younger families, can identify as being part of humanism, as well as giving them ways in which they can, as Roy was just alluding to, for young people's education, principles that they don't have to go to a religious source to get ethical foundations, and that's a big part of what we can offer. That you don't need to go to a religious source to find why you need to be good, and that's definitely something we can address as an organization.
Francis Rowan is asking about could First Amendment separation of church and state be endangered if the conservative movement to have a constitutional convention succeeds? I'm not sure about the constitutional convention, but you could certainly talk about how recent Supreme Court rulings are impacting the First Amendment and what we can and are doing about it.
Sure.
Go ahead, Roy.
Start. But I think that there is a very significant danger. In fact, I think it's one of the biggest dangers to humanists that exists right now, is what's happening in the courts in that the jurisprudence is changing from a previous attempt to equalize the rights of all, so that civil rights, including religious liberty, were essentially equal, to now there is a move toward putting religious rights first before all other rights. And I think that's a very dangerous thing for humanists and many marginalized communities and others around the country. And that's something that we have to raise public awareness about. It's something we have to fight in the courts with our legal team. It's something we have to address in the legislature with our lobbying efforts, and really with everything we've got, because it's quite significant and concerning.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I don't think we need to even go so far as a constitutional convention. I mean, in a constitutional convention, there are ways in which you can change the constitution, using a convention, but it doesn't even need to go that far. Just with the composition of the Supreme Court as it is now, and given how the court has established for itself over the last 200 years, the ability to say what the law is, essentially, the only way you can override once the Supreme Court says something is unconstitutional is to actually have a constitutional amendment. And given the 6 conservative justices on the court, and that is the biggest threat that non-theism has in this American Republic. We should all recognize that. And because it can leverage itself into other things, like the voting rights decision that just came down at the end of the last, the term that just finished, which basically said that you can have a lot of restrictions on voting, and it has to meet this really high unreasonable threshold that is not in the written law that was passed in the 60s, the Voting Rights Act. And now that is the law of the land because the court says so. So the most important thing we need to do as humanists is, apart from all the fighting in the courts that Roy was talking about, is that we have to take the voting and elections seriously, and we have to work hard at putting forward candidates or supporting candidates who will stand for the rights that we believe in, that not just us, but there are many other groups that other than humanists who also believe in equality and things like that. But that is the most important thing. I mean, it doesn't have to take constitutional convention. I mean, this can be done with a lot less, and we are seeing that right now in front of our eyes. And as humanists, we have to take our voting seriously. We have to vote in elections that and make a difference, and then demonstrate when people with power use excuses to limit voting rights, as they have been doing recently.
Amy Halpern Laff is asking, when will humanists expand our moral circle to include animals other than human?
Troy, you want to go?
Well, we definitely support some degree in this area, but it's been limited. We don't have a lot of AHA policy that covers issues around animal rights.
Yeah, as Roy just indicated, I mean, that is a challenging question. No, we won't pretend otherwise. I mean, it's not something that we have, as humanists, have spent a lot of time on. Not because it's not important, but it's there are many different things to spend our time and energy on. But it has come up, and we have some history of speaking to animal rights in the past, and will certainly be one of the issues that we will be spending time on.
Woody Kaplan asks, are you concerned that the social justice agenda, the part of the strategic plan, will take up some of the finite capacity to advocate on behalf of secularists?
Not too concerned about that myself. I feel that the work that we do as humanists inherently includes social justice work. So when we're working on social justice work, we're working on humanist work. As far as how it competes with other work that we're doing on legal rights related to church-state separation and the like, I don't see us backing off in the slightest in any of those areas. I think we're going as strong as we ever have, and we're able to add more. And so that's kind of how it's been playing out so far. I don't know if you want to add to that, Sunil?
Yeah, I think, the one thing I would point to is there was a presenter today who made the point, I think, well, which is that, you need to have social justice to be able to make use of reason. I mean, reason is a luxury sometimes that only people who don't have to worry about, their sort of subsistence and in everyday life can afford to worry about. So in that sense, being good encompasses providing people the ability to achieve the full potential of what their reason can bring to humanity. And in that sense, I certainly don't see social justice as being outside the realm of what we should consider as being a core part of humanism.
We have two questions that are both essentially asking whether the AHA has a position on critical race theory.
We don't have an official position on that whatsoever. The way, but it's worth mentioning that, and because it's, the issue on animal rights came up too. The AHA board has addressed many subjects about humanism, and that connects to humanism in one way or another over the many years that the organization has been around. And there's quite a deliberate process the board goes through in reviewing a suggestion for a policy statement, considering the different angles, having experts get involved in the process before a position is taken. And so sometimes things that are, even though critical race theory has obviously been around for a long time, sometimes issues that have become especially popular only recently, we're not likely to have had policy on.
Yeah, the only thing I would point out about that is that phrase, critical race theory, is being used just like, by analogy to things like, anti-vaccine efforts and, many things like that. There's a lot of misinformation about what that is about. I mean, it's a very specific academic theory that, was put forward in the 90s. And now it is being used to simply, negate any discussion of equity or social justice. So that's definitely not something we stand for, in the sense that we are for accuracy and good information and truth. So, but as to whether or not the theory itself, what it does say and doesn't say, and so on and so forth, that's not something that we have taken a position on. But it's clear that it's being misused for in ways in which we cannot support, primarily because as humanists, we believe in being providing good information and being truthful.
Yeah, thank you, Sunil. That's an excellent point to raise.
This is Chris Campbell saying, I am writing a book about the history of the American atheist movement. Are there any books about the history of the AHA?
Well, my first book, Creating Change Through Humanism, has a chapter that is all about the history of the American Humanist Association itself. But there are other books out there that talk about AHA history, and including the genesis of the Humanist Manifesto and works by others in the humanist community that I'd be worth checking out. Additionally, if you want, ping me individually and I can send you some suggestions.
We're getting close to the end of our half hour here, and we're winding down to the last few questions as well. One is, what can the AHA do to reach out to more regular people, is the question from Jack Holmes. I would like to expand that to say, what can the AHA do to reach out to more people in general in the most inclusive way possible?
Roy, you want to go first?
Sure. I think that there is a definite consideration about this. Those who've been involved in the American Humanist Association for a long time know that our philosophical bent has kind of targeted our approaches and our outreach more toward those who are, highly educated. I know we did a survey and we had something like over a third of our members were postgraduate educated, which is very significantly different from the general population. So I assume that's a little bit what is meant by the question. How do we reach more of the general demographic of the United States and others. And I think that we're trying to turn that corner. And some of the work that we do, both in policy, in public outreach, the advertising campaigns that we've done about Good Without a God, these are sorts of things that I think can appeal to a broader audience.
Yeah, I think some of the strategic goals we mentioned are geared towards that in a sense, depending on sort of how the questioner intended the question. So, for example, community building, which is one of our goals, is about getting more people involved who may not necessarily care about the theoretical or the philosophical aspects of humanism, but who simply want to be good without a God. And so the community building, accelerating and improving what we are doing there is definitely one important part of it. Another important part of it is the accelerated participation for young humanists, which itself is a way to expand and broaden the people who we who consider themselves to be part of this movement. And as you heard on the panel today with the young humanists, there are many ways in which we all can, as the organization and as the movement, do things to make sure that younger people who may identify, if they knew about humanism, can be brought into the movement.
And then I think we're actually a few minutes over, but I'm just going to ask one final question, and that's: does the AHA have a lifetime membership? And if not, are there any chances of creating one?
Do you want to answer that one yourself, Nicole?
We have had lifetime memberships in the past, and we don't push them very hard. We would have to, I think, find the right way to create a lifetime membership that has meaningful benefits to people, that would make them want to join. And still, at the same time, the point of, to be very practical, the point of memberships is to support the AHA and provide us with the resources to do what we do. So we have to balance those two things.
Mm-hmm. That's right. But definitely you could, the best way to be a life member is to be a member and re-up every single year.
In fact, the easiest way to do that is to become a member and make it a recurring payment. So every year it automatically re-ups and you're in effect a lifetime member.
Good idea.
Is there anything else you would like to say to?
Yeah, I just want to say again, thanks to all the members who attended, all the presenters, all the volunteers who helped, and most importantly to our staff, all the people that Roy, carefully spoke about. We would not have had such a successful conference without our staff, who have been working very hard, especially over COVID, which is not an easy thing to do in terms of continuing to push forward our goals while not being able to be in the same place at the same time. So from the board and from myself, a big thank you to the staff for all the hard work they've been doing.
Mm-hmm. Terrific. Yes, thanks so much. It's been wonderful.